Hi, I'm Nel Donato, artist and designer, and in today's video I'll be talking about how I currently use an art journal, a specific recycled art journal, this one over here, to release perfectionism and be more experimental and spontaneous about my work and just have a lot more fun making art without judgment, without self-criticism, without stress and pressure to create something, worthy of sharing with other people. And it's been a lot of fun. Now, I'm not going to be talking about in detail, about this whole art journaling for perfectionism, because I've already talked about that in an earlier video from 2014, if you can believe that. So I'm going to link it up so you can watch it for a bit more information on this concept of how art journaling can help you deal with perfectionism and sort of release perfectionism. Now, of course, it's been 6 years since then, and I still have a bit of perfectionism. It's not like I'm entirely cured. It's a long process. You have to be patient with yourself. It's not going to change overnight. And I'm definitely seeing a lot of improvement in how I feel about my creative practice. And I just realized I'm having as much fun making art as I did when I just first got started. Because when I first started sketching, when I was in high school and early years of university, it was just so fun. I did not have any expectations about what my skills should be like. And then over the years, I kind of started getting hard on myself. And now I'm back to that beginner mindset where I'm just having pure joy about my art. And it's been a great experience, and I'm really excited to talk about that and how this little unassuming recycled notebook is helping me achieve that. These two notebooks or sketchbooks are the same. So this is a Fabriano Schizzi sketchbook with 90 gram per square meter paper weight, which means it's not a very high quality paper. It's a very, very basic sketch paper, quite thin, but also has a nice kind of tooth to it and this off-white color. Maybe you can't see it in the video. Okay, so it has a bit of a natural color. I don't know if you can notice that. A bit vanilla-like. And I use these sketchbooks as my intention journals. And intention journal is sort of like a planner, but not really a planner because I don't believe in planning. And if you're interested in learning more about that concept, I wrote a blog post about my approach to planning and why planning doesn't really work for me and why I think it doesn't really work for a lot of people. I actually have heard from other people who also complain that they can't plan at all and they need something else. And so I discovered this kind of more setting intentions for the year and then setting intentions for the month and just tracking my progress without judgment, without kind of thinking about, I need to get this done by that date or some other date. I mean, yeah, sure, if there's a deadline involved, then that makes sense to have that, some kind of a timeline. But if it's something that I'm doing, just my own personal projects, some self-initiated business projects, then I'm not gonna hold myself to some, unreasonable standard. I just want to keep track of what I want to do first and foremost, and also my obligations to other people. So this is just what it looks like. My earlier ones were more colorful, they had a lot of more kind of backgrounds to them and so on, but I stopped doing that because this paper is not as good for that sort of thing. So I kind of just keep it simple nowadays. But that's my current planner. That's what I want to show you. And this one is my recycled planner, which is the same sketchbook, but with some stickers and some paint on the cover. And then inside, there's a lot of stuff going on that makes you think, what it even has to do with a planner, because you can't really see what was underneath and what was going on in this journal slash planner beforehand. So that's what I want to talk about today. You know, what I did to turn the ordinary used up planner. So I'll have some pages here. A lot left to cover. What I did to make these pages visually interesting, why I'm doing that, how I'm doing that. I'm gonna show just a couple of techniques, different ideas I'm trying out. But before I get to that, I want to just mention how I arrived at this idea, why I even started doing that. And just to show you quickly my art journal that I shared in a different video that I will link in the description so you can check out the whole tour if you want to see what's inside. So this is a Moleskine sketchbook with slightly thicker paper, also kind of cream colored, and I use it as a mixed media art journal. And since I used it also in a class, I was doing some written assignments onto the pages. And I kind of thought after I completed the class that it was a waste of paper, that a lot of these pages that are filled with writing, I'm not really attached to that writing. I don't really feel the need to read it again or to do anything about it. I don't think it's useful for me anymore. So I decided to do something else on those pages, to repurpose those pages and do some kind of art on them. And so here you can see this is a bit of writing showing through underneath the acrylic paint and some white gesso. I was testing which one works better. And there are drawings on top of it. So this is a drawing with water-soluble crayons, which I tend to use a lot on pages like this. And also these are Inktense pencils, which also work quite well on matte paint and on gesso. So that's one example. Another example is this spread, which is just lots of different areas covered either with craft paper or with white gesso or with black gesso. And then I did all sorts of different experiments with paint, with crayons, with markers, with gel pens, you know, doing some printing with leaves and all sorts of stuff, just trying things out. And that was quite fun. So I have another page that's quite similar to that also. There used to be some writing. You can see just bits of it poking out here, but not a lot, because I think it's a red pen underneath, so it doesn't show through the pink or magenta. But also there's pages like this, which are not very attractive looking. I just did some scribbling over them with Inktense pencils and with crayons, so nothing to write home about. But again, I just reused those pages in a way that I like. And something else that I did also was gluing scraps of from books. So this is Alice in Wonderland underneath. So I covered up the text that was at the base on the page, and then went on and painted over that. There's another one that I did in a very similar way. Also, I just glued the entire page from a book, which was roughly the same size as the page in a sketchbook, and then covered it up with PVA glue. And I learned that the PVA glue is quite nice to work with crayons because you can blend them with fingers because it's not glossy, but it's kind of slick. So you can draw on that with pencils, especially Inktense pencils and water-soluble pencils, because they tend to be a bit softer than regular colored pencils. But also I was able to use these crayons on them and blend them with fingers, which gives this really soft effect that I really like. So I was just discovering some new ways of doing mixed media, which it probably wouldn't occur to me if I didn't have this need to cover up these pages and do something else with them. I was just solving problems. Like I had a page that had something on it that I didn't like, and I tried to figure out different ways to cover it up. So when I completed this sketchbook in January 2019, I figured, I would like to keep doing this. I think I've stumbled onto something really fun and interesting, and I would like to keep exploring that. And so something that caught my eye on the shelf was this old used up planner from 2019, or my intention journal. And I thought, yeah, that could work. I could just use that and see how that turns out. And so this is where we are right now. There's still some pages, lots of pages that I haven't yet started working on, but I'm going to show you just some techniques that I've used on this in this journal so far. So this is a page covered up with my calligraphy practice. And this calligraphy practice is done with water-soluble ink. So when I went over that with some matte gel medium, it did kind of smear, and the gel medium picked up this kind of pinkish pigment from the ink. So it's not like perfect, but again, I'm starting out with a junk journal. I'm starting out with something that was supposed to end up in the trash. So I'm not very precious. I'm not very concerned with what is going to turn out. So if there's smears of ink all over the page, that just adds to the character of the page. And then here I'd added a very, very thick layer of crayons. And then when I do that, what happens when the two pages kind of stick together, they start rubbing, because this is a spiral bound notebook and spiral bound pages tend to rub against each other. And then, there's a bit of pigment that transfers onto the adjacent page. And again, this is just something that you need to work with. It's just a challenge to consider. I now have to think about to go with something dark here so that those two pages don't cancel each other out. This is still a work in progress. Another thing that I like is black gesso. I've gotten into it recently, or not so recently, but I definitely have been on a binge of using black gesso. So here's a page that I haven't used yet, and there's a bit of crayon transferring onto from this page too, as it often happens. And these white ornaments, I've drawn them with white acrylic ink using a dip pen, and the colorful areas are done with water-soluble crayons. I'm using Neocolor 2 crayons and Stabilo Woody crayons. I have just a small collection, but I keep adding to it just with one color by color. I don't buy large sets. I like to take individual colors that I like, because you can see I have a very limited color palette, so I don't need a lot of paint to do what I like. So I have a couple of more of these black waiting to be filled in with something. Then there's the colored acrylic backgrounds. So let me just show you an empty one. So this is an empty acrylic background with kind of dark violet. Then there's a red acrylic paint. So acrylic painted background. So this is just an empty page. There's another, where is it? That's another one with purple. And this is one where I was just cleaning up my brushes. I was using these colors for some other thing, and then I just painted over a page to clean so I don't throw out the paints, and who knows what this will be later on. So here in the beginning of the sketchbook, I have a couple of these painted backgrounds. So this one also purple, and then I did the white accents are white acrylic ink, which I'm really happy with. And also some colored accents, details, and these kind of shading done with water-soluble crayons. And that's just trying things out. Not really planning on making artworks, but just trying things out. This is soft pastel on white gesso, unfinished. I'm not sure if I'll finish it. So these are all acrylic backgrounds. These are Inktense pencils on acrylic background. And possibly a little bit of white crayon. Okay, so I have some pigment on my fingers. So, paint backgrounds, quite interesting. But then also you have to kind of learn how to work with the colors that you already have on the page. So this was an orange background, and then I saw a really nice photo of a sunset with this lighthouse and the mountains in the background, and it was really easy to cover up the orange with darker colors. And here it's really nice blended with the reds, and I'm kind of digging how the colors turned out. The drawing itself is not really something special, but you know, this is just an experiment of working over an orange background. This is just a page where I've been doing some, doodling, and then added some like vignette shading on the edges, and it already looks really nice. And the writing underneath, here you can barely see it, and here it is visible, but it just gives a layer of interest. It kind of makes the entire page look more interesting than if it was just pure red background. It doesn't hurt like the drawing, because it's not even supposed to be like a nice drawing. So this is on some tan background, like kind of latte colored background, which was nice for a portrait, because then you all just need a little bit of warmer and cooler colors to get the shading right. This is done using Inktense pencils and water-soluble crayons, and it was really quick. Like, I was able to cover up so much surface in, I don't know, less than half an hour. And to do this kind of drawing on a white piece of paper, it would take a lot longer to cover up the entire, area of the face with something. And again, there's a bit of writing poking through, but I don't mind. It's not my best portrait that I ever did, nor, that was really the goal of it being perfect, but just a practice. So another thing, I don't have a blank example of that, but I have something where you can see it better. So again, a page from a book, just glued in, some PVA glue, and then the background is colored with water-soluble crayons, and the detail of the butterfly are done with a pigment marker and some water-soluble pencil. And again, that same technique I used here, just pages from a book covering the entire page, so there's no writing showing through. And these pages are quite uneven, so if you can see how the light reflects off of it, they're quite wobbly, but I don't care. I don't care, because again, this was a notebook that was supposed to end up in the trash, and everything that is better than that is, I'm happy with it. So these are all water-soluble crayons, just smeared with fingers or with water, and the black one is Stabilo All, because I found that is the only pencil that can reliably write over other crayons. So that comes in handy on drawings like this. So I like this. I'm probably gonna do more of these with the book pages. So this is a watercolor background. I have some blank ones here. And you can see this is not watercolor paper. So the watercolor background itself has a lot of rough, very sharp edges. The colors aren't blending so well. If the color is a bit thicker, like a thicker consistency, you can see brush strokes very clearly, but it's really not the point. It's just to act as a background for something else, to kind of reduce the contrast of the text, and then I will build up on some other layers with other colors. So here I started doing with this negative outline of the flowers, the tulip flowers, with a black crayon, and I'm going to go back in with some colored pencils and crayons to do some, let's say, 3D-ish shading on the tulips themselves. And here I've done the same using water-soluble crayons and a brush pen to draw a portrait. And again, there's lines showing through, there's a check mark showing through, but I don't mind. Again, it's not supposed to be a really beautiful portrait. I was just filling out the page. So that's all there is to it. And something else that I've been experimenting with is gesso with watercolor. So I have something similar here already. So this is also a layer of gesso and then watercolor over that. And then watercolor acts quite differently than if you put it on just regular paper. You can see that there's quite a bit of a difference. Here the colors blend more because they stay wet for longer, and there's all sorts of kind of puddling happening around. So you have these very, very dark areas where the pigment was kind of pulled into these little puddles, and that's how it dried. So there's a little bit more contrast to these. I think maybe these are going to be more difficult to work on because I don't know what to do with it. These huge black areas, like no idea how to even start. But I have another spread that I did in a similar way with a bit more balanced colors. So here I was just looking at what kind of shapes are popping out from the background and just outlined what I was seeing with brush pen. And here I just used this aqua gray background to draw a flower of a passion flower on top of that. So I kind of just added more contrast with darker pastels. These are soft pastels. And you know, it's cool. It's not my best drawing. It's not even a realist flower drawing, but it works. So that's kind of what I'm experimenting with right here. There's a lot of room to try out. I'll have many opportunities to kind of refine new techniques. And what I'm really just pleased with is my own attitude to these pages. Because when I'm working in a sketchbook, I'm often kind of trying to make a good drawing. I'm trying to do something, you know, in this sketchbook, I have like, so something similar going on. There were 2 pages that I had with a bit of color. And this one I did like almost immediately. It was just, I saw a red background. I thought, what is this inspiring me to do? And I thought, yeah, a heart. I often draw hearts, but this one has been waiting for months and I still haven't figured out what to do with that. It's just a bit intimidating. I also had other pages painted with colors. Like, you know, this one was empty for the longest time. There was also one with black gesso that I was also, where is it now? Here. So this one was empty for months. I don't even remember when. I think this one was from last summer that I painted this black background, and then it took me almost a year to do something on this side of the spread. Because when it's pure, when it's blank, when it's fresh, when it's, you know, a proper sketchbook, it's just so intimidating. And I catch myself all the time of having this perfectionist freeze up, like not knowing what to do because, I don't want to waste the page, which is silly. And I have so many sketchbooks. I can't even tell you how many sketchbooks I have. I think there's at least 10, maybe 12, 13 sketchbooks on my shelf right now that are waiting for me to draw and paint in them. And here I am drawing in a recycled journal because this doesn't intimidate me. This sounds inviting. This sounds like it's a problem to be solved. Like, how do I make trash into treasure? And it's hard to explain, but it's definitely something that I recommend to try. You know, maybe you don't have to use an entire journal. Maybe you can just find some kind of a page in the trash. Packaging usually has like cereal packaging, packaging for socks or stuff like that. They have this little cardboard inside. It's kind of sturdy and could be used to draw with pencils and crayons and acrylic paint. You can do that. You can just use junk and paint on that. There is an animator or a character designer whose name I forget, but I'm gonna add it to the transcript. So he did character design for Corpse Bride, which is one of my favorite cartoons ever. And he's working on cereal packaging. He has like piles and piles of drawings made on cereal packaging. And it looks really nice, you know? He's using ink pens and white pens, and these backgrounds have sort of like this grayish tone. So it looks really nice. You know, you don't need expensive sketchbooks to be creative. You don't need expensive cardstock to draw something nice. You can use just junk that you have lying around the home. And so that's what I wanted to share with you. I'm really, really excited about working in this sketchbook. And I'm going to share it with everyone once I'm finished with all the pages. It might take me a while. As you can see, there's a lot left to fill. But in any case, hope you enjoyed this video and hope to see you soon. Oh look, there's an ant. An ant in my video. Hi there, ant. And now he's gone.